Thank you, James. Wow, that was fantastic. So, I want to, before sharing a few thoughts with you this morning, I'd like to share a reading with you from someone who I think some of you at least remember pretty well, Gordon McKeeman. How many people here knew Gordon? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Gordon was, I got to know Gordon. I've actually never met Gordon in person, but we spoke on the phone a few times because Gordon was the emeritus minister of the congregation I served in Akron, Ohio, and very much a legend there. There's a room in the church that's named after him. And he left such an incredible and extraordinary legacy at that congregation. So the reading I want to share with you is I think a pretty famous one from Gordon, at least among Unitarian Universalist ministers, where he sort of lays out in typically poetic and beautiful Gordon McKeeman ways what ministry is. So let me share that with you now. Ministry is all that we do together. Ministry is that quality of being in community that affirms human dignity, beckons forth hidden possibilities, invites us into deeper, more constant, reverent relationships, and carries forward our heritage of hope and liberation. Ministry is what we do together as we celebrate triumphs of our human spirit, miracles of birth and life, wonders of devotion and sacrifice. Ministry is what we do together with one another in terror and torment, in grief, in misery and pain, enabling us in the presence of death to say yes to life. We who minister speak and live the best we know with full knowledge that it is never quite enough, and yet are reassured by lostness found, fragments reunited, wounds healed, and joys shared. Ministry is what we all do together. Gordon McKeeman. Beautiful, beautiful words. Well, good morning again. Let me begin by saying how wonderful it is to be in this pulpit sharing worship with you this morning. I've been kind of looking forward to this day for quite a while, and I can't begin to describe how honored and privileged I am to serve the UU congregation of Charlottesville and to make this journey with all of you. I also want to say how much I appreciate all the kind words of welcome I have received during my first week. It's actually technically less than a week. From emails and Zoom conversations to folks who have stopped by, taking a moment to say hello here at the church, I have been greeted with so much kindness and expressions of goodwill. In fact, Pam and the board has gifted me with a welcoming team who are I'm going to get together with them this week. That's Elizabeth Breeden, Brett Gastinger, and Ann Salamini. The four of us are getting together, and so they can share their wisdom and experience about the church. And I think we talked about them maybe taking me on a tour. By the way, I just want the three of you to know that I am hoping and expecting that while on this tour that you're going to show me where the treasure is buried and also the secret panels and doors leading to all the tunnels. So I also have to give a shout out, as I've gotten to know them this week, to your incredible staff that serves this congregation. Although I'm only just getting to know them, I have already witnessed how talented and passionate they are. You see, from what I've heard, their work for the UU congregation, for them, the way they talk about it isn't a job. It feels more like a calling to serve the values and principles at the heart of this church community. It is so wonderful as a minister to have a professional staff that is excited to serve. And I have already witnessed that excitement from Caroline Hines, your religious education assistant, from Scott DeVoe, who I've had coffee with. He's not here today. Your wonderful music director, and from Sean up there in the balcony, who, how do I describe Sean? He knows how to do everything. Is that a fair statement? Sean's he's too humble, but that's about right. Sean can do it all. There are a couple staff members I haven't worked with yet, Leah Ray and John Mayhood, but I'm looking forward to meeting them. And then, of course, finally, I have to say something about your Reverend Leah. Reverend Leah and I we're already buddies. We have developed a close collegial partnership. And I feel so blessed and fortunate to be ministering alongside such a talented, kind, passionate, and gifted minister. We are all so lucky to have Reverend Leah. By the way, Reverend Leah's on study leave right now. I don't know if she's watching. I warned her before she left that I was going to say a lot of nice things about her. So. Now, speaking of wonderful ministers like Reverend Leah, I have had the privilege of learning from so many during my own journey to ministry. One of those ministers is sitting in the pews this morning, my good buddy, Reverend Wayne Arneson. Wayne and is it okay if I say better half? Reverend Kathleen Rollens were co-ministers at a congregation in Cleveland when I was in Akron, Ohio. So we became friends and colleagues, and they've both been wonderful mentors for me. And I've just been so blessed by them and by so many ministers who have touched and influenced my life. And undoubtedly, you'll hear more about some of them in future sermons. But today, I want to tell you about one particular minister who touched my life and whose memory I always carry with me. Now, this particular minister didn't attend seminary. He may or may not have been religious. I really don't know. Never came up. And certainly didn't wear a robe or preach from a pulpit. But he most assuredly ministered to me, and his wisdom and example helped me become the minister I am today. Now, I met this gentleman, and I'm going to just call him Mr. Carter, not Jimmy Carter, different. Almost 20 years ago, when I was a seminary student in the Boston area. Mr. Carter was an elderly man. He wasn't very tall, not like me. And he had immigrated to this country some years ago from Jamaica. Now, whenever I saw Mr. Carter, he usually dressed pretty simply, and he always wore a baseball cap. In fact, every time I saw him, he reminded me a little bit of the actor George Burns in the movie Oh God. Many of you, that goes back a ways, but that memory would flash that image would flash in my mind. Now, when I first met Mr. Carter, I was beginning a ministerial internship at the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, which was located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. For those of you who aren't familiar with UUSC, it is a human rights organization that was founded by our denomination. It was actually originally two organizations in the late 1930s to help refugees fleeing Nazi persecution. Today, UUSC partners with human rights organizations across the world and offers opportunities for UUs to work for human dignity and social justice. Now, throughout my internship at UUSC, which lasted kind of an academic year, about 9 months, I had to walk several blocks to the office from a garage where I parked my car. Now, as I made that walk on my very first day of my internship, I remember I was nervous and uncertain. I didn't really know anyone at UUSC and had only spoken to my supervisor once, and that was over the phone. I was also the first ministerial intern they had had in quite a few years, and to be honest with you, when I started, I don't think they really knew what to do with me. We figured it out eventually. Now, my walk to the office took me down a street that had a mixture of multifamily homes, a few businesses, and a large apartment building. As I walked down that street on that first day around 8:30, I'd say, in the morning, most people were hurriedly passing by it's part of the morning commute as they headed for the nearest subway station or bus stop. Many were listening to headphones and had their heads down as they were looking at iPods or cell phones or whatever. But there was one person who was standing on a sidewalk, smoking a cigarette. I don't advise that part. That was Mr. Carter. Now, as I approached where he was standing, I noticed that Mr. Carter appeared to be saying something as people passed him by, but very few of those folks appeared to notice or hear him. There were a few who did at least sort of look up, and then I also, as I got a little closer, I saw a few people who seemed to look up at him as they approached and then crossed to the other side of the street. Now, I have to confess, as I approached Mr. Carter, my first thought was, well, maybe he's asking for money, or perhaps maybe he's saying something kind of rude or unpleasant. I'm sorry to say that the thought crossed my mind to cross to the other side of the street. But I'm so glad I didn't, because when I got up to Mr. Carter, he simply looked at me, made eye contact, smiled, and said, "Good morning, sir." That was it. Now, I don't know how many of you have spent time in a New England city, like Boston or Cambridge, but in my years living there, receiving a warm greeting from a total stranger is pretty out of the ordinary. So when I walked past Mr. Carter on that first morning, I was caught off guard, not only by his greeting, but also by his tone of voice, which was warm and kind and lacked any expectation that his greeting would even be returned. He simply seemed to just enjoy the experience, the moment of offering a heartfelt good morning and a smile. Now, I don't remember what I said. I probably went, "Good morning," and kept going. I was probably a lot like those people who seem sort of, what's the word? Like automatons, I guess, I don't know. And I went on my way. But as I continued my walk, I noticed that, something inside me started to relax a little bit. It's almost as if that simple good morning helped me to breathe, to let go of a little bit of my worry and anxiety, and to simply be open to what the day had to offer. Now, throughout the duration of my internship, throughout those 9 months, with a couple of exceptions, I exchanged good mornings with Mr. Carter every day. Well, I think I went in 3 times a week, but every time I went in. Sometimes I would stop and we would chat about the weather, or sometimes a ball game, usually the Red Sox, that had been on TV the night before. I learned, as we talked more and got to know each other, that he was retired, that he actually lived in that tall apartment building, which I think was an apartment building for seniors on kind of fixed incomes, and that he loved to come outside in the morning to smoke, but also to just say good morning to people as they headed for work or school. Well, I can't begin to tell you how much this man's friendship touched my life and helped me learn and grow as a minister. See, Mr. Carter helped me to see that what I had thought were the big stuff of ministry, being a minister is about preaching great sermons and giving public speeches and teaching classes, and it is all about those things. Whereas things like, hey, how are you? Good morning, welcome, those were the smaller stuff. Mr. Carter helped me see I had it all backwards. Those are the important things that I would do as a minister, because I had experienced how powerful it is to be greeted warmly, to feel welcomed, and to feel that my presence mattered, even to somebody who didn't really know me. It is because of Mr. Carter that for as long as I have been a Unitarian Universalist minister, on Sunday mornings, I stand outside or inside by the front door if it's really cold and greet people as they come to church. I didn't learn that in seminary. I didn't learn it from another minister. I learned it from Mr. Carter. Welcoming has become a huge part of my ministry, and I am so excited to learn about all the ways that you welcome new people and to talk with your greeters and the membership committee. Christine and I have already exchanged emails, and I want to just make sure that everyone who comes through our doors, no matter who they are, where they have come from, what they believe, or who they love, I want us to work together to make sure that everyone feels welcomed and appreciated, just as Mr. Carter made me feel that first day and every day that I saw him. Now, that's not the only lesson I got from this wonderful man. You see, I learned from Mr. Carter that a minister isn't just the person that wears a stole or preaches a sermon. A minister is someone who serves, who cares for and about others, and who reaches out to share that care and concern with the world. That's what made Mr. Carter such a great minister. He didn't simply keep his friendliness or his kindness to himself. He didn't stay in his apartment or just sit there on the street, staring at his phone. He let his passion for meeting and greeting others shine. And that beautiful light has shined and continues to shine on me to this day. And I think Mr. Carter had something that is essential for ministry, a sense of calling. Now, the idea of calling or being called can be sort of theologically complicated and maybe a little hard to articulate or understand. Now, for some, in what you might call sort of traditional religious circles, being called is sort of like being summoned by a higher power, perhaps to save souls or win converts. That's being called. That's great if that's your cup of tea. But for others, and I think I fall a little bit more into this category, being called is about listening to what touches our heart and stirs our soul. And then once we've listened, being called is about then acting, about putting one's heart and soul into the service of others and the world. That's why one of my favorite definitions of ministry comes from the spiritual writer Frederick Buechner, who is one of my favorites, and I highly recommend him. Listen to what he says. He says, ministry is, and I'm quoting here, that place where our deep gladness meets the world's deep need. Ministry is that place where our deep gladness meets the world's deep need. So as we begin our shared journey together, here are some of my questions for all of you. What is the UU congregation of Charlottesville's deep gladness? What touches your hearts and stirs your souls? What is this congregation, what is it that you're doing or experiencing together when you feel that you are at your best? And where and how do you use your deep gladness to meet the world's deep need? How do you turn your joy, your sense of purpose, your calling into acts of love and justice, compassion and kindness that meet the needs of a world that is, quite frankly, hurting and very broken. These are the kinds of questions I hope we explore as we begin this shared journey of ministry and love. I'll tell you, just in 6 days, I've already met quite a few Mr. Carters right here in this congregation. People who are passionate about UUCville and about Unitarian Universalism, and who are working to turn that passion into wonderful deeds of ministry. But as Gordon McKeeman reminded us, ministry isn't just what we do on our own. Rather, ministry is what we do together. Each and every one of you is a minister. And what I hope we can do together is to find ways and find how we can weave your individual ministries, your callings, your passions into a shared ministry of love and justice that, and here I'm quoting Gordon, will affirm human dignity, beckon forth hidden possibilities, invite us into deeper, more constant, reverent relationships, and carry forward Unitarian Universalism's and the UU Congregation of Charlottesville's heritage of hope and liberation. Friends, I am so thrilled to be sharing the ministry of this congregation with all of you, and I cannot wait to see where this journey will take us. We have so much love to give, so much justice to create, and so much hope to share with the world. Let's make a beginning. Thank you so much for listening, and blessed be.